right. That's the opening music for the Murderhawk Monster. Lance Hoyt, Lance Archer. I'm still used to calling you Lance Hoyt. I can't help it.
Well, one's the real name, one's the work name.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you're man, you got a lot going on right now. You're working for AEW. You
Yep.
still do a lot with New Japan. I
Hmm.
saw you on some Ring of Honor clips earlier today. I was kind of
Hmm.
digging to get the latest of what's up. I
Yep.
mean, we're doing this on a Monday because you seem to travel a lot. A lot
Yep.
of the other times we were picking a time. How's that working out for you? How's your schedule, man? You're always on the go, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a little more than others. AEW. You mentioned Ring of Honor. AEW owns Ring of Honor, or Tony Khan owns Ring of Honor. So working for Ring of Honor now is just kind of part of the package deal to a degree. New Japan has been a lot less, obviously, since I joined AEW. But luckily, because of our working relationship, I've had opportunities to go back over there and work. The last time I was over there was back in November, December for New Japan's Tag League. They're building a lot of new young stars. They're not using as many foreigners as they used to in the past. The COVID era, unfortunately, for all of Japan as a whole, really wrecked their economy. So it hurt all like the sporting events, pro wrestling, and all that stuff as well. So they don't have financially, they're not as strong as it was pre-COVID.
I hate hearing that. They're great people.
Yeah,
Because of
yeah,
you, and we're going to get into that later. I got introduced to those guys
yeah.
and did a little bit of business with them, and they were good people. I enjoyed working with them. I heard they sold recently too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the parent company that owned New Japan, which was Bushiroad, which was the company when you guys were involved in. Well, no, hold on, Ralphie, I'm doing something. That's my dog. Uh, the parent company Bushiroad that owned New Japan back when you were working with the NWA and when NWA was working with New Japan. Yeah, they sold recently. The primary owner of New Japan is TV Asahi, and then the minority owner is I can't remember the name of it, but they're the same ones that own like Pro Wrestling Noah and things like that. So they have a minority stake in New Japan now. It's a bigger company that owns Pro Wrestling Noah, like I said, but the main owners of New Japan Pro Wrestling now are TBSI.
Yeah, I think weren't they the TV partners all along, and they just kind of took it over from the owners.
Well, they bought it. So
Yeah, yeah,
before it was just, there was TV deals, and it's not the same as in the States, which is a big thing and a big factor, especially with, talking about the COVID era and whatnot, that kind of kept pro wrestling afloat in the US because we had the major TV contracts, whether you're talking about AEW or WWE.
yeah.
So on a financial side, we and them weren't worried about or weren't working with live audiences as the main source of income. So TV was the main source of income, whereas in Japan, working with TV Asahi and Samurai TV, I think is the other one that would show some of the New Japan stuff. Like it was kind of a per appearance type situation.
Yeah.
They paid New Japan to broadcast events, but it was never like a full on partnership. There wasn't like a
Gotcha.
contract between New Japan and TV Asahi or New Japan and Samurai TV or whatever it was. So on a financial side of things, like I said, New Japan's business was very old school, still is to a major degree because their business is based on tickets sold, merchandise sold, events run, things like that, kind of an old school style of business in professional wrestling. Whereas now with wrestling in the US, it's really about the TV contracts. How big is your TV contract? How
Yep.
long is your TV contract? And that really funds pro wrestling as a whole. And then, obviously with shows doing well and crowds being big and things like that, that kind of helps pay for the buildings and the visualization of what's happening in pro wrestling.
Yep. And we spent a lot of time on them. I mean, right now your bread and butter seems to be making movies with Steven Spielberg.
I wouldn't call it my bread and butter. I mean, AEW is truly my bread and
I know
butter,
I'm
but
teasing, of course.
it'd be nice if the film industry, Hollywood, came a call and I was able to kind of transition into that, especially at this point in my career and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really, really cool moment to be a part of. The most recent Disclosure Day movie that is, like you mentioned, directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg.
That's amazing. When we set this up, I had no clue that
Mhm.
you were involved in that, and I watched an interview you did with a young lady probably a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago,
Yep, jailer.
And I learned about it, so I had to do a little homework on that. But yeah,
You haven't seen it yet? Come on, man.
no, I'm not a movie guy, man. I got to wait for it to come to my house.
But you had a reason. You had a reason.
I did.
It's still out there. You still have a chance.
But I only watched that interview with her yesterday, so I
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
have enough. Anyway, AEW is the bread and butter, and
Yep. Yep.
you've been with those guys. Let's see, they started in 2019. Were
Yep.
you pretty much originally on board, or did it take a little bit?
No, actually not. So like in 2019 was kind of my breakout year in New Japan Pro Wrestling because as you know, most of the time that I was in New Japan, especially when we were working together with NWA, I was a tag team guy with
Yeah,
Harry Smith or Davey Boy Smith Jr., the Killer Elite Squad, multi-time IWGP, a couple time NWA tag champs, a couple time Noah Pro Wrestling Noah tag champs, so we were pretty big deal as far as we were big in Japan, as they say. And then in 2019, Harry kind of separated from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I was kind of put back into a single situation. I had a match with Will Ospreay in New Japan's New Japan Cup, which is usually in the spring, and it kind of caught everyone off guard. They went, "Oh crap! Wait, you can wrestle?" Because I've just been doing tag team stuff. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do the stuff that I did in the singles match with Will Ospreay, who, it obviously has become one of the big stars in the business of professional wrestling. Um, like I do yeah, I'm not going to do that in a 10-man tag in random Kyoto, Japan or something like that. So this was an opportunity. I was presented, it did well. And then fast forward, they did their G1 Climax, which has just started recently. Actually, I'm wearing a G1 Climax shirt, I think.
cool.
Um, and again, Will and I tore it up in Dallas, Texas, of all places,
Yeah,
because Pro Wrestling, or excuse me, New Japan did their first G1 Climax uh, show, match, anything, any way you want to put it, outside of Japan in Dallas, Texas, at the American Airlines Center. And Will and I were the very first actual G1 match to ever be seen outside of Japan live by any audience.
that's
And
huge.
we tore it up. We killed it. We did something that I think again, I think there was a little more expectation after the New Japan Cup match. So the fact that we were able to go above and beyond that, especially in Dallas, Texas, live TV because it was broadcast live on Access TV. So it was like one of the most visible things New Japan Pro Wrestling had done outside of Japan, probably in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Will and I were the very first. There was a couple like prelim matches and things like that, but as far as the G1 Climax, which you're a wrestling fan, you don't know anything about the G1 Climax, it's still today probably one of the biggest, baddest singles, heavyweight tournaments in the world of professional wrestling.
Yeah,
So it was a really cool experience. So 2019 was kind of my breakout year, and that's kind of what started it. Like I said, was that New Japan Cup match and the G1 Climax, which did really well the whole way through. And then, like I said, AEW started. I wasn't there. I was still with New Japan. But in all those years I've been working for New Japan, I never was a contracted wrestler. I was just a tour by tour guy. It was just old school business style.
right.
That's how they did it. That's how they did business with me. And I guess it was one of those things like, you after working with the Japanese, they're very structured. This is how they do things, and they don't deviate from that.
Yep.
If they start a relationship with you, it stays as it is, and it doesn't really change. It doesn't really, become something different than whatever it started as. And that's just kind of how they did business with me. So even though they had been signing guys, especially foreign guys, to full-time contracts, I wasn't one of them because they just didn't do business with me like
Hmm.
that. And
Hmm.
I had a great relationship with them. I've been working with them since 2011. Um, and so the door was open, and I don't think they understood how open it was because now AEW is coming into the picture. Some of our guys did leave to go to AEW when AEW first started, when they first announced they were becoming a thing, and signed contracts and left New Japan. And I wasn't there. I worked the New Japan Tag League, which is, like I said, late November, early December. I came back from that, and I just happened to come back like a couple days before AEW was doing one of their broadcasts, one of their Dynamite shows in Dallas, Texas, and they just started TV in October. Um, I went there and had some conversations, and then basically it was found out that, oh, you don't have a contract? And I was like, no, I just work tour by tour. And I think that sparked an interest. They were like, oh, because like I said, 2019 was kind of my breakout year. They invited me to come down to Corpus Christi, Texas, which was the following week, and had some conversations with Cody Rhodes, who at the time was, a big part of the booking committee and all that stuff that was there, one of the EVPs and everything. And they had an idea. It was kind of a part-time deal at the time, but at the exact same time that they were offering this part-time deal, New Japan made their first actual full-time contract offer to me, like
Mm.
literally the day I was driving down there, and the timing couldn't have been crazier. So when I had that conversation with Cody and them about it, it was kind of a situation of, I love the idea, I would love to do it. And again, this is late 2019 going into early 2020. Nobody knows that the pandemic and all the craziness that was going to happen was coming. And I kind of said, listen, my situation is this. I'm offered a full-time contract. I can't just accept a partial, turn down a full-time for a partial that possibly could lead into something. And then that created a situation where they wanted a full-time and they offered me a full-time contract. A little bit of negotiation back and forth because Tokyo Dome and everything happened right then. I had a great Texas death match with John Moxley in Japan. And then ultimately I chose to join AEW, started, under contract in early February, debuted in early March, literally the day that I debuted with Jake the Snake Roberts in front of a live AEW audience was the night that basically the world shut down because we were actually in Salt Lake City, but Salt Lake City, the basketball team was somewhere else.
That's
And
right.
they had one of their players test positive, and like literally they shut it down, kicked all the people out of the arena
Mid
that they were
game.
in.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, what's
Mid
that?
game or like early, like before it started or something.
Yes, before they started, like it was
Yeah.
completely full with people ready, waiting for the game. But this one player tested positive, and then they were like, "Nope, we're done. Everybody out." I think the Mavericks were the only team that actually finished the game. I think there were a couple teams that were like mid-game and stopped the games and sent everybody home, and like the world shut down right after that. So that's kind of how the whole AEW moment came about. Was just that 2019 was my breakout year. Contracts were offered at the exact same time, like I said, and then I chose to be with AEW. And amazingly and gratefully so, because obviously the world shut down into a crazy place. And some of the stories I heard from a lot of the guys that were still with New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially with the Japanese and how strict they were with their COVID rules. Guys were coming over, testing before they left, testing when they arrived, doing a legit 2 week quarantine in like government hotels and stuff like that. And
Ouch.
like it was, and then staying for, 3 to 6 months at a time, just because they couldn't fly back and forth. It was pretty insane for the guys that stuck around there.
Sounds like the right situation happened for you at the right time.
God's time is amazing, bro.
That's where I'm headed.
Yes,
I told
yes,
you that when I said I wanted to do this this discussion was
yeah.
that you know it's easy to talk about wrestling and everything,
Mhm.
but faith is what drew me to you saying, "Hey, this," and it's always what drew me to you. Well, let me back up.
Okay.
You were really so easy to work with. And you
Well,
set
thank you.
boundaries up front. You were
Yeah,
like, hey, no drama, no BS. I do what I'm going to do. You do what you're going to do.
right.
And I really respected that because that's not the way the independent scene always works, right? And
No.
and and so you were really good with me. You treated everybody. We had a little family business. Here you are working AEW, going to well, you weren't at AEW yet,
Yeah,
but
New
you'd been
Japan.
to Japan. You'd worked WWE and TNA and all these other places, and you come to my show. My wife's working the front door. My 15-year-old kid's taping the matches, and I'm ring announcing, picking up money, paying people, and everything else. But you just treated everybody really well, and and I just knew there was that element of faith and that element to do the right thing in you. And it seems as time has gone on, you didn't hide it back then,
Hmm.
but it seems like you've come out even more and more. Is that as you get older, are you feeling more comfortable? And it's like, what the heck, man? I'm just going to be who I am.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that's a lot of that comes with age, and you start to
Yeah.
kind of give less of a crap about what other people think, especially in those situations.
Yeah.
I've never professed myself as some kind of saint. I'm absolutely not. I have a lot of flaws, a lot of mistakes, lot of stupid sins in my life. But my faith has always been strong. And, I think more recent in the last few years, especially, it's kind of like, you know, I can be ashamed of myself to a degree, but I definitely can't be ashamed of God, because if I'm ashamed of God, he's definitely going to be ashamed of me. And, you definitely don't want that. And like I said, I have my belief, I have my faith, I have these discussions with some friends. Um, and it's one of those things that, they may ask questions and I will always tell them what I believe and how I believe, but I'm not judgmental in my approach, because I never believe that I can be judgmental, because I could be judged just as quickly and easily. And I've always said, especially with some of the people and friends that I have, they're very resistant to the idea of God Almighty. They're very resistant to the idea of Jesus Christ as a Lord and Savior. And that's okay. I mean, that's the point. It is a choice. It is your choice. You can make that choice however you want to be. And I always tell them, I was like, God doesn't send anyone to hell. He just allows you to make the choice and go where you want to go. And if you're not going to choose him, you're not going to choose his son, Lord Jesus Christ, as your Lord and Savior, then he's allowing you to choose your path, which unfortunately, in my belief, in my faith, is a path to hell. Um, it's just one of those things, like, that can get kind of harsh and people get kind of weird about that and whatnot. But yeah, definitely in the last few years, I'm definitely not ashamed of professing my faith, but I'm not going to be like overly judgmental to anyone or anything that they're doing. I don't have to take part in things, but I can also not sit back and point fingers at anyone about anything.
Yeah, I don't like people telling me what to do,
Right,
and I can't stand when people push their beliefs on you. But at the same
right,
time, I got my own, right,
right.
and I should feel comfortable with that. I don't know if you remember in our locker room in that beat up old VFW hall, I always tried to start the show with some kind of prayer where I
Yeah,
prayed for you guys and said, "Hey, man, God be with you,
yeah.
and may you stay healthy and all that." And I could tell it made some of the folks in the locker room uncomfortable. Have you
Yeah.
ever, because you've spoken out in a certain place, whether it be in a locker room or with some of the guys, has anyone ever kind of called you on it? I'm not asking
No,
you to tell me who it
no,
is, but yeah,
no, not at all. No, no, no one has, because again, I'm not walking around like with my head up high, my nose in the air, like I'm better than you because I believe in God. I never do that because, again, I can so easily be judged. My mouth is way too loose sometimes. My thoughts and my actions can definitely be considered very sinful. So I'm not somebody that can sit there and go, "You're bad, I'm good. I'm going to heaven, you're going to hell." Like, I can't do that,
I'm
because
just trying to save me.
yeah, exactly. And so no, I don't get that from anyone. There might be people like kind of behind my back that may
Yeah,
be that way, but because I'm not walking around telling anyone that they're wrong or they're going to hell or anything like that, like I'm not judgmental in that sense, because again, I always see myself as not being worthy to be judgmental. I can have an opinion and whatnot, and if somebody wants to ask me my opinion, I can tell them my opinion, but I can also tell them my opinion in a non-judgmental way, not in a non-damning way, because that's not my place. So no, I've never had anybody, and maybe they're just scared of me. I don't know. But no, no one's ever really gotten in my face about it. It'll happen on social media and stuff here and there,
yeah.
because that's just social media. Social media is funny because it is the place where the trolls live, because they can say and do what they want to say and do because they're protected behind their screens. And most of the time they're pushing it from like burner accounts, or it's just coming from bots, like a bot farm where some dude's sitting in front of 100 screens, and anything that pops up, it's like, ooh, let me try to push the buttons of Lance Archer. And because if they can get me to react in a negative and derogatory way, well, then that blows up on the internet. It's like, oh, look at Lance Archer, he said this, or he thinks this, or he's this way, or whatever, in whatever negative way they can. And a lot of times when people get extremely like vulgar or judgmental towards me, and say something rude or harsh or mean towards me on social media, a lot of times I just don't reply to them, because they're just doing it so that they can be seen and
Hmm.
noticed in that moment. And positive comments don't get noticed. The negative comments are the ones that get absolutely, like, that blow up, that go viral. Or B, if I do respond to them, it's usually just a "God bless you,"
Yep,
which usually
that kills them.
doesn't get them anywhere with it. They're just like, nah. and then the internet can't do anything with it. It's kind of like the bless your heart, the Southern Texan bless your heart. It's an insult for the people who don't understand what that means. But
That's right.
if you do it, there's no fire, there's no ammunition for the ones who want to just get you.
Yeah. It's the internet is I was telling my son this earlier. It can, if you want to find good, you can find it on the internet. If you want to find bad, you can find it on the internet. It's
Yeah,
everything in between is there too, and
yeah,
it comes at you the more you put yourself out there.
yeah.
Sticking with the faith, I kind of got to it
Okay.
sooner than I wanted to, but like again, it's easy to talk wrestling. I like delving into other things.
Okay.
Um, in 2017, you experienced an injury,
Hmm.
pretty bad back injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that. I was out of touch at that time. I'd been away for 2 years, and I remember sending you messages just saying, "Man, I'm rooting for you, and God's on your side, and I'm on your
Yep.
side, and all that."
Yep.
But tell me kind of what happened there.
So like the whole time that we were with pro wrestling, not the whole time actually. So we did a stint where the group that was Suzuki Gun that Smith and I were a part of, we were sent to Pro Wrestling Noah kind of on loan from New Japan, and we did it from 2015 and 2016. It was supposed to just be 1 year. It turned into 2 years. Well, that second year, I don't know when, how, or why it happened, but I was dealing with a pretty severe sciatic situation. And if you've never dealt with sciatic, you just don't understand the no pun intended, the hell it puts you through because it is rough. You can do all the stretching you want and everything, but it's just something that's constantly there. It comes and goes in severities, like to the point where you can barely walk and things like that. And I was dealing with all that and wrestling on that. So, I was traveling to internationally to Japan and sitting on those very uncomfortable buses for hours on end and then wrestling, every night for, 2 or 3 weeks at a time. Okay, Ralphie. Um, and so it never gave it a break, and I didn't really understand how to really, I didn't really understand what I was going through, so I really didn't understand how to take care of it or maintain it. Now I'm got a pretty good knowledge on how I can decompress my spine and all that fun stuff, and I didn't really know it then. So I think I was just compounding on it over and over and over for a full
Mhm.
year, to a weird degree. Luckily, talking about God's timing, uh, we went back to New Japan in early 2017. Like we made our return the night after the Tokyo Dome. Like they literally flew us all the way to Japan, hit us in a different hotel, and like brought us to the arena late on January 5th, just to do a run in, and then the next day we all flew home. Um, and then we did the first tour starting in early February. And so I remember we went to Sapporo, Japan, which is up in northern Japan. You don't have to fly there, but like you have to go at the northern tip of the mainland Japan, and then ride a ferry for 4.5 hours, and then drive another 2.5 hours to get to Sapporo or whatever. So we'd flown up there and we did the show, and I, the funny thing was we did a match, and the match itself I don't think got me. We did a run in later, and I think the run in is what really got me. And the next day we were flying back to Tokyo, and I remember I was like, oh man, my back is really tensing up. It's really getting bad. It was like top of my left butt cheek, and then down through my butt cheek, through the back of my leg, into my knee, and into my my calves and whatnot. The numbness, and then the lack of strength, and just constant nonstop pain. And then we got back to Tokyo, and like the next day we had a match at Cork and Hall, and it had gotten so bad the next day at Cork and Hall that literally like we had like a 10-man elimination tag. I remember this was pretty crazy. We were winning, Suzuki Gun was winning, and that was the only reason I stayed by the ringside. But I remember one time, like Tai Chi comes to try to tag me in, and he puts up his hand like Lance, and Tai Chi doesn't speak like really good English. He just it's enough, and he gets by, and we can communicate just a little bit. And this was at a point in the match when like anything could happen, so like calling it on the fly, as we say. And so he was just going to tag me in and let me do big man stuff, until I needed to tag the next person, and we were going on to the next moment of the match. And I just looked at him and went, no. And he went, oh, he really didn't know what to do. Tag somebody else in, match goes on, match finishes. I go straight to the trainer's room afterwards, and they're like doing acupuncture and massaging and doing everything they possibly can to help. Luckily, this was back when we would stay in the Tokyo Dome Hotel, so literally just hobbled back up to my room. I think we had a full day off, but like it got so bad to the point where like the next day I called them or I messaged somebody and I was just like, I need to go to the hospital and get checked out. They did take me, thank goodness. They put me into an MRI, which is my first time ever doing an MRI in my life. Uh, and the Japanese think, and I think the old school style of doing tattoos was like lead based or had like metals in the ink or something.
Mhm.
So they were telling me they're like, oh, maybe your tattoos will burn when we do this MRI. And I'm like, they're gonna burn. They're like, maybe, the bad broken Japanese. And I'm like, oh my God. And they had me a little button. They're like, if burning, please push. And I was like, oh, I'm just holding it, wait for this burning sensation, like the ink's going to get yanked out of my skin. That did not happen. I was shoved into this tiny little MRI machine, and they basically came back. And like, luckily, my doctor that was dealing with me, um, he'd ultimately done like 6 years in Ohio, spoke perfect English and everything. And he basically was like, yeah, the protrusion from your L5S1, which is the base spine, and then your tailbone basically, is protruding out so far that we can't see the nerve ending.
Mm.
And they tried everything. They gave me basic medication. They gave me, we ended up doing like a nerve block shot, which has a fun story in itself. They gave me an actual epidural at one point. Like none of this was relieving any of this, and like I was kind of going back and forth to Tokyo Dome, and then finally, like there was one day I was in the Tokyo Dome, and like none of these reliefs had happened. The tour had gone on. Like I was staying in Tokyo at this time. Like they were like, oh, just stay and relax. And like there was another big show at the end of the tour. They're like, if we can get you back on tour, we will. Or at the very least, maybe you come to the last show and do the tag title match that they had planned. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse to the point where I was in the Tokyo Dome Hotel and had to call them because I could not dress myself. Like I was literally like on all fours in my room in the Tokyo Dome Hotel crying, basically naked because I couldn't dress myself. Uh, got me, put me in a taxi, didn't even call an ambulance, got me in a taxi. And I'm hold on just a second, let my dog out.
Yeah.
There you go, buddy. Go. Sitting here whining. Anyway, put me in a taxi and took me to the hospital, and like to the credit of the Japanese, like they knew that the only like comfortable way I could be was on the floor with my feet up on something. So when they got there, the hospital room, they put the mattresses on the floor, waiting for me to get there. And fast forward, the doctor had said, this was like on a Friday, and he's like, if I can't get the anesthesiology team in here on Monday, we're gonna have to wait till next Friday. Like I said, this is on Friday, so I'm thinking, oh my God. So he comes in Saturday morning and he was like, I have good news, bad news. And I was like, okay, what's the bad news? He's like, I can't get the anesthesiology team in here on Monday. And I was just like, oh man. I was like, so in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to be stuck here on this floor till next Friday. And he goes, but I can get them in this afternoon. This is like on Saturday. And
No good.
I was like, in 3 hours. And I was like, he was like, do you want to do it? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So we did the surgery. It was a success. Like the next day or that day, after the surgery, I woke up and he was like, how do you feel? He's like, do you think you can stand up? And I was like, yeah, I think I can. And I did. And he was like, be careful and everything. But yeah, from then on, it was, like I said, the timing of everything, time and time again, we talk about, God's timing is amazing, and that was another one. It's like, I can't get him in on Monday, but I can get him in here today. And that wasn't even an option, the day before. So it was, like I said, everything happened, done. And since then, I've had moments where it's flared up, but again, I've learned how to decompress my spine and do all the things I need to do to kind of get it to relax and not go back to what it was.
That's good. That's good. You were working for New Japan when that happened. Do you feel fortunate that that's the case? That's fortunate. Again, God was doing
Yeah.
it for you.
Yeah.
Because if you're working the independent scene in America, you're on your own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the timing of everything was great because I worked with that sciatic situation for a year with Pro Wrestling Noah. And granted, Pro Wrestling Noah wasn't New Japan, but we were working with New Japan. So there's a
Yeah.
case to be said that maybe if it had happened while we were working with Pro Wrestling, that New Japan still would have helped me and everything would have been the same way it was. But literally, like, we returned full time to New Japan in early 2017, and then, like I said, it happened, and they were trying to send me home initially. They were like, "Oh, we'll send you home." Like I said, this was like after I was crying in my hotel and couldn't stand up or move or do anything. And they're like, "Oh, we'll send you home, and then
Oh,
if it's still really bad, you can come back and we
yeah.
get taken care of." I'm like, they're telling me this while I'm on my second bag of morphine to
Right.
just try to ease the pain. And I went, I can't get on an international flight. And so they had whatever discussion. They came back like, maybe surgery is the only choice. And I was like, yeah, I think so. And like, it was called a microdiscectomy, which, basically they opened me up, and then they cut the nerve ending off, or excuse me, they cut the protrusion off, to relieve the pressure from pressing on the nerve in my back. So it's not fused or anything, but there's a little bit of disc still left there.
Were you afraid at any point that that might be the end?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lots of prayers, lots of, I'm probably deserve this because of the dumb choices I've made in my life and sins that I've committed and things of that nature. A lot of reflecting, a lot of praying, a lot of, you know, questions and I never say promises. Like, I've never been one that in any of my prayers has been like, God, if you just get me through this, I promise I'll be the best. I will never
Right.
do it again. I feel like that's, we're lying to ourselves and we're trying to lie to God. And that's a really dumb choice to do because
Yeah.
God knows that's not the reality. I just always ask for God to try to help me to be better, to try to help me make the right choices and stop making the wrong choices and whatnot. And like I said, during that time, especially when I was dealing with the worst of it, obviously lots of crying, lots of prayers, lots of like, please help me get through this.
Yeah, I found myself in a similar situation. It was an injury, but
Hmm.
we lost a family member, a baby,
Hmm.
earlier this
Hmm.
year,
Hmm.
and I went through a couple of stages. I went through, I'm mad and I
Right.
don't want to talk to you,
Right.
to praying literally within the next second subconsciously. It just
Yeah.
naturally came to me.
Yeah.
And I felt really lucky that I had that foundation because my mental self didn't feel like that was the right answer at the
Right.
time, but my spiritual self did,
Yeah.
you know? And when did you start having that connection? I saw in that other interview you said,
Hmm.
it was kind of it wasn't a big part of the house, but it was part of the house as a
Well,
kid.
no, it's a big part of my house. My
Yeah,
dad's always been a part of the church, and he was always taking me and whatnot.
yeah,
I think my point was that it was never kind of like the way I approach it. It was never
right.
forced upon me. I mean, I'm a child. I don't get to make decisions. It's a very different era. I'm slightly older than most of the young men and women of today. They're allowing children to make the most crazy and ridiculous decisions in their lives. That was back when Dad said, "We're going to church," and you didn't
Right.
have a choice. But it was never a point of you're going to church and you believe in God and you do this and you pray and blah blah blah. It was always like, well, this is what we do. This is where we go, and this is why we're going. I'm presenting you to God. I'm not telling you to look, worship God. I'm just telling you I worship God. My Father is saying this, and this is what I believe, and this is how I believe, and here you go. Presenting me to the situation. So he never forced forced God upon us, but he definitely, like I said, this was old school. It was like, well, I'm going to church, so you're going to church.
Mm-hmm. It's great that you had that foundation because you had something to
Yeah.
turn to. I always think, I
Yeah.
often wonder, what do people do who don't have that foundation? If I would have been in the situation I was in February, what the
Hmm.
heck would I have done? And what would you have done in
Right.
2017? When you're trying to get well from a serious injury, if you
Right.
didn't have that foundation, somewhere to seek comfort and
Right.
guidance, you know?
I don't know. And I mean, you can, there's arguments for every situation that exists, from people who don't have the foundation because they weren't raised in it to people who were raised in it, raising it to the point where they're rebelling against it type situation. And for you and what you were going through with losing a child, which is, was this your child or was this like a grandchild?
A grandchild, yeah,
Grandchild. And that's like, it in itself, like I said, I don't have any children, but I kind of equate like my sister's children. She's got her four kids, her and her oldest just turned 15 and whatnot. And I've told my sister in the past, I was like, they're not my kids, but I'd die for your kids, Allison. And that's my
Hmm.
sister's name. And I think that kind of not caught her off guard, but it really made her feel good. And I'm just the uncle. And that's the closest I can come to equating to that. So to the idea of imagining one of them passing in whatever fashion, like how beyond hard, especially as the parent directly or the grandparent directly,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. So having that foundation, I think, is truly what's something that helped you. But again, there's people that have come from every walk of life that have had a foundation and rebelled against it, and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who never had it and then found it, or there's just I think that's the beauty of Christianity is you can come from anywhere and you can come from any time, from every different situation, good, bad, or indifferent. And God is always there waiting for us.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about when you were younger. You're in high school. You're in Hearn, Texas.
Hearn, Texas.
Hearn, Texas, and I know this about you, but I don't understand it. We're going to get to it.
Uh-oh.
You're a Chargers fan when you grew up around the Cowboys to the north and the
Yep.
Oilers to the south.
Yep.
How the heck that happened? We'll get to that. But when you're playing football
Uh-huh.
and all of that stuff, I mean, what kind of kid were you? Were you like
A
Mr. Big
crybaby.
Man on campus jock guy?
A crybaby. A crybaby.
You were.
I was, man. It's a funny thing to say, especially now where I'm at and whatnot. And I think back, it's like, oh my God, I was either just a spoiled, rotten kid to some degree. Not that my parents, spoiled me or anything like that, but just maybe I was just so coddled in a way that I didn't know and understand it. But I remember just not being very tough. We our church had a roller skating nights, and I remember specifically like we would do a limbo contest, and my tall and lanky kid, and I was trying to do this limbo, which doesn't make any sense to be as tall as I am and doing limbo on
Right.
roller skates, and I would lose my mind. Like one of my biggest things in life. I don't know how to say this, is learning patience and emotional control. And like I would just lose, like run to the bathroom and just be like crying and angry. Like my anger was coming out in tears and whatnot. So as a younger kid, I didn't really understand how to focus that and control that. And I think sports, when I truly got into organized sports, is what started kind of helping me move in that direction, to toughen up, to learn how to have some emotional control and things like that. Because I played, a little bit of baseball through, my younger years and whatnot, but that's, kids playing baseball. It's not the same, but it wasn't until I think I got into true like high school sports when I started playing football, and, football's being tough. And this is, early 90s, mid 90s Texas football. So, you were getting the crap kicked out of you. There was no non-full pad practices. There's one water trough, with two water hoses connected to some PVC pipe, and you once in a while got a break to go get some water. So you had to learn to be tough. And I think that's when I really started learning like how to focus myself, how to be more emotionally controlled, having that organization in sports and whatnot. People want to ask, what's the importance of having sports for kids? And I think that's one of the biggest
Yeah.
things. I think it's been lost to a degree because we allow kids to just participation ribbons and trophies and not really earning things and stuff like that's just my personal opinion, that it's kind of softened up. I feel like it's kind of going back into a different degree because it got so soft for a small bit of time. But like I said, when I was in high school and whatnot, it was very early. It was tough times. Like I got a lot of grief for having longer hair, so I shaved my head, type stuff. So it was a very different time.
You cared what other people said. That's the problem.
Well, I cared what my coaches said.
That's
So
right. That's right. Did you were you recruited to go to college to play quarterback?
not much. So I again, small town, Hearn, Texas. We
Yeah.
weren't a good football program. My senior year, the only year that I started, we were 3-10, or excuse me, 3-7. And I threw more interceptions than I did touchdowns. But I had, the kind of the stats. I think I was about 6'4" coming out of high school. Wasn't that heavy, still needed to add some muscle mass, but I had a good arm. I had good, you know, uh, 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 recruiting stats that a college might like, and then I kind of got recruited by uh, 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 oh man, Texas A&M Commerce down in the Corpus area and whatnot, or not Commerce, Corpus Christi, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, whatever. I
Mhm.
can't remember. Not, I think I'm saying it wrong. I'm sorry. But regardless, it was a small school, and then Howard Payne University kind of came calling, and that's where I ultimately went my first year, my first couple years. But Howard Payne was in AIA at the time, so they didn't have like roster restrictions. We had like 200 plus players out there. We had 11 quarterbacks my freshman year, stuff like that. And then I ultimately ended up at Texas State, but I never played. I was just on the sideline a lot.
Did so at Texas Tech you never played ball? Okay.
Texas State.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
Texas State. Texas State. Yeah, yeah.
Texas State.
Texas State.
No, never played. I dressed for one game. I had a polynidal cyst removed during training camp.
Yeah.
Which if you know what a polynidal cyst is, that is its own non-fun situation. But yeah, it took me out of practice. It took me out of possibilities of gaining a position within the team and whatnot. So by the time I was healthy and ready to go, the season was already ongoing. And then, so I dressed for one game. And then because of that polynylosis situation, like I let my grades slip. And then the team was like, listen, your grades have slipped to this certain degree, and we have to take you off the team. Basically, you have to get your grades back up to a certain GPA. And if you do that, you can return in the spring and then continue on. I ultimately got the grades back up. I tried to return in the spring. It was a weird situation. That was basically the end of my football career.
Yeah, yeah. But did you finish school there? You have
Yeah,
you have an English degree, right?
I do have a bachelor's degree in English from Texas State University.
Wow, that's awesome. So you got out of sport, you got away from the sports and focused
Mhm,
on school, and I think that's great for you because as you're, these are your words, you're closer to the end of your career than you
mhm,
are to the beginning or the middle. You said that on the
mhm,
podcast I saw.
mhm,
You have something to fall back on. I think all these guys that are involved in not just wrestling, but
mhm.
football, or you see them waiting tables or something,
Right.
or swinging a hammer full time. Like at some point, you get tired, or the season just changes,
Yeah.
and you got to move on to something else. You've got a degree, which matters. You've
I
also
don't
got
know.
acting experience now. I mean, and I think there's a good book in you. I mean, you're an English.
Yeah, I think English was one of the ways I went through college, just because it was probably one of the more creative degrees you could get.
Right?
I wasn't like an art guy. Couldn't draw, I couldn't paint or anything like that. History, science, and mathematics, all that stuff is very, very strict, very logic. This is how it exists and doesn't really change from that. Whereas, English is an evolving language, and as far as writing is concerned, can be very creative. And I think that's kind of why I went into English. And then obviously with the idea when I was in college, I was wanting to play football. But the idea was obviously if and when football didn't work out and that was my only route, well, then I can be a teacher, I can coach, I can do those things and whatnot. Now, nearly 30 years after the fact, I don't know how much of a help my bachelor's in English from Texas State University would be, but I guess it's still there.
It matters.
Okay.
It's harder today if you want to go out into the public job market.
Mhm.
Having a degree will get you in more doors than not. That's for sure. I don't have a
Well,
degree, and
okay.
I got to tell you, as I got older,
Mhm.
it was difficult. That's why I'm a real estate agent now because I work for myself. No one else would hire me, so I work for myself.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, all right, back to the Chargers. How,
Okay.
why, how, why? I
Why
don't get
not,
it.
man? Why not? Why not? No, so here's my story, and I think the reason why. So when I was a little kid, I remember this very specifically because my mom, like, this is late 80s or whatever it was, back when you ordered stuff out of the back of a magazine or whatever. And I think I saw like the Chargers helmet, which was real cool. Back then, especially the Dan Fouts era, the colors were much brighter, with the blue was a brighter blue, and they had the yellow face mask, and just everything was brighter. And I think it just attracted me. And she ordered me like, a child's like helmet with the jersey or whatever. And I just think I liked the uniforms. I liked the way it looked. So then when I actually started watching the game and started playing the game, it just kind of carried over. Even though my dad was a big time Cowboys fan and whatnot, and like nobody was an Oilers fan in our household, but he was a big Cowboys fan and whatnot. But I just, because I liked their uniforms as a kid, when I actually started paying attention to the game, I just carried it over. And the old Stan Humphries, the one and only quarterback in Chargers history to take them to a Super Bowl, and the Junior Seau's and the Natron Means and the Marion Butts and the Vince Gills and all those guys. Just there's so many names that I can name from back in those days. And then obviously the LaDainian Tomlinsons going in, the Phillip Rivers, more recently, Justin Herbert and everything he's doing and whatnot. So I've just been a fan. It's been awesome. Well, not awesome because they're one of those teams that's always good and on that cusp of being great, and they just can't get over their own left foot, it seems like.
Yeah. See, I'm a Saints fan for life, and we're exactly opposite. We usually weren't good, but
Yeah.
once
Yes.
we
You
got
took
there.
you took our guy
You
and then
gave him away.
became Super Bowl champ. I know they did because he had this shoulder injury or whatever.
You gave him away. But
This is true. This is true.
um, are you still a big football fan? I mean, is it just the
Oh yeah.
Chargers, or you love football? Are you kind? I love football. I'll
I love
watch arena football on the internet, right?
I so there's yes, I love all football, and obviously the Dallas. So my one story, I tried out for the Dallas. What were they called back then? It was the arena football when arena football was still pretty strong. It was right before they closed down. They closed down for like one full season because there's a lot of under the table like
Yeah.
paying of players and whatnot. And so they randomly did a tryout at the old Texas Stadium. And so I actually went and did a tryout, and I think they started out with like 22 quarterback, people trying to be quarterback. And I got down to like the last, I think it was 7 or 5, something like that, before I got cut from the tryout. And then ultimately, like I said, the tryout didn't go anywhere for anyone because like the next season got shut down. But that was a cool experience because I got to go out on the old Texas Stadium and throw passes and run the field and do all that stuff, where all the legends of Dallas Cowboy lore had played. And so that was pretty cool. I love CFL football. I think
Yeah.
CFL football is one of those games that, like, if they had the full power caliber of NFL players, it would be the best game in the world just because of how fast it is and all the moving
Mhm.
players and all the cool stuff that's going on there. Got to go to an Argonauts game. One of our guys that works with AEW used to write and do stuff with the NFL, so he's got a lot of football connections and got us tickets to an Argonauts game last year. Yeah, I love the UFL. Me and some friends are big fans of like when it was the XFL and when it
Yeah.
turned into the UFL. I got a couple of my friends that they work for the Renegades now because um, after the Renegades won the XFL championship a few years ago, like on social media, I would post about it. Well, one of their social media people reached out to me and was like, "Hey, would you like to come up to the Arlington offices and see the trophy and take a tour of the offices?" And I was like, "Heck yeah! Can I bring a couple of my friends because they were the ones that went with me to all the games?" And they're like, "Yeah, bring them." And then both of them. So actually, the one is Thomas Bussey, and him and his family in the roundabout world of professional wrestling were the people that ran the first company that I ever really worked with in Dallas, Texas. It was called PCW, Professional Championship Wrestling, and they
Mhm.
still run. They don't do pro wrestling anymore, but they do MMA, mixed martial arts. They do a company called XKO, and they run a lot of events out of Texas Live and things like that. So I brought him with me, and he ultimately met them, and now he works for the Renegades, and he basically does any odd job that they need on the field, off the field, around the stadium during the games. And then the other guy's a guy named a friend of mine named Antonio Perkins, who I got involved with the Bussies with PCW. So he started doing announcing for PCW, now still does the announcing for XKO, their mixed martial arts company. Well, again, I brought him to the offices with me and introduced them. And he's one of those guys that can talk, he can charm his way into anyone's minds and hearts, and ultimately he's talked his way, and now he's the voice of the Dallas, or excuse, they were the Arlington Renegades for 2 years, and now the Dallas Renegades. He calls himself the Pebble because he kind of looks like a small version of the Rock.
Yeah.
um, Yeah, and he goes around and does all like the on the field talking to the fans, and they put him up on the screen and does like the little contests and stuff like that. So real big, fans and part of the whole UFL and everything that it's doing. So yeah, it's been real cool, man.
I love the XFL when they first came back in 20, like the COVID thing shut them down, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
kicked off, and
yeah,
Houston had a good team, and
yeah,
then they came back with Wade Phillips, and then they just went, and then the
yeah,
switch to UFL. I think
yeah,
we may end up losing our team eventually, but I enjoy it. And I'll watch somebody
yeah.
else's team if we lose ours. So the Desperados was your AFL team. I
There you
looked
go.
that up on the
Yeah,
internet while we were talking.
those computers that we have, they'll tell you everything you need
Yeah.
to know.
One
Yeah.
thing that you helped me with, I don't know if you realize this, but when we were having shows at my place,
Hmm.
I would always pick your brain about nutrition
Hmm.
and trying to get in shape. I was forever trying to get in shape, and I still am.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you really helped me with food, and
Okay.
I think about food differently now. Now you're a big guy. I'm 5'5",
Hmm.
100, 200 pounds.
Okay.
You're 6,
Six,
7,
six,
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 six.
6, 7. I'm sorry.
Yeah, um, and a big man. What is your like? I try to eat 1,900 calories a day and 200
Right.
grams of protein.
Right.
What does your diet look like?
I wish I actually knew the numbers better. Like
Yeah.
now that I've been with AEW as long as I have, and for one of my better friends with AEW, it actually was in the Disclosure Day movie. He's actually the reason I got the part in Disclosure Day is Brian Cage. And
Yep.
if you've seen or looked at Brian Cage, he is
Crazy.
the epitome of the physical specimen. He is the ultimate body guy of body guys. That's something we say in pro wrestling. Is like, are you a body guy and whatnot? And like he's got it down to a science. And like I've gained a new respect because there was a little while there I was like, I'm gonna really pay attention to this. What are my meals, my macros, my protein intake, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to do. Like that is the hardest part with controlling your body and what you're doing is just especially if you're counting calories and you're counting your protein intake and things like that. For me it's just for me it's more of a simple approach. It's trying to have more protein in every diet and every meal that I take, less carbs in every meal that I take. I have a horrible sweet tooth, so it's trying to find like sugar alternatives to the things that I want when I'm sweet, and then dialing back on those sweets. And then for me, it's also a situation of portion control. It's not trying to eat too much in each and every meal, but having more meals throughout the day.
Hmm.
Trying to keep like on about a 5 meal situation throughout my day. Breakfast is my favorite meal of the day. It's probably my easily most controlled meal because most people think of breakfast, they're thinking pancakes or waffles or these cereals and sugars and things like that. Mine's just I love some steak and eggs. I love some
Hmm.
beef and eggs. With a good Greek yogurt, maybe a rice cake with a little bit of peanut butter on it, stuff like that. And then just like I said, most of my meals are more protein than carbohydrates, but trying to keep a decent balance of that. And then, like I said, portion control, not trying to eat too much within each setting. Now I've kind of tried to controlling my late night eating, which is hard to do when you're on the road and traveling because you'll be traveling for hours on end and just be starving and still have to try to get something in, but trying to make sure that it's something that's not just horrible because that's the easiest thing to get is the most worst possible things you can stuff into your face.
Yep.
But when I'm home, trying to control that, not eating, 7 o'clock was my last meal here this evening, and I'm going to try to adhere to that till at least 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, something like that. So for me, like I said, it's just trying to have high protein, low carb, and then small, consistent meals throughout the day.
That's what you helped me with. You helped me like cut back on carbs, and that's the one
Mhm.
thing that kind of got through to me through our
Mhm.
discussions. And I cut back on the carbs. It's harder now that I'm older. If
Yeah,
I cut back on carbs, man, I get depleted quick. So
yeah. Well,
it,
and it's keeping good carbs too is another thing. People think cut carbs and like I'm just gonna cut everything out. It's like, well, just trying not to eat like the bad, horrible processed carbohydrates, but
right.
like a good, basmati rice or something like that, or, sweet potato, things like that. Those are good carbs to keep within your system, and it'll keep you kind of going and keep the energy levels high and whatnot. And it's trying to maintain and navigate that crazy world of dieting.
Yep, yep. I think if we don't talk a little bit more about wrestling when people watch this, they're going to say, "What the heck were they doing?"
Got
So
a belt in the background.
yeah, hey, there you go. So AEW
Hmm.
is the bread and butter. I saw a
Hmm.
recent video where
Okay.
the Murderhawk Monster, his voice is all contorted, and he
Hmm.
starts talking like this and being a monster. And I don't know. It sounds to me like he's a guy that's got something to prove.
I think that's the one thing about my whole career is always just kind of proving people wrong, catching people off guard is, when those opportunities come, because I've been blessed. Like I can't really complain about the longevity of my career and where I've stayed and whatnot, being a part of AEW since early 2020 and with no real end in sight at this point. I'm not doing a whole lot. There could be a lot of argument about, oh, well, you've only achieved so much, but there's not a lot of guys and girls that will be in this business for 26 years and
Yeah,
going.
yeah,
And that's what I've been doing. And most of my career has been with major companies, early years of TNA back in 2004 to 2009, a couple, a short cup of coffee, as we say, with WWE. Um, 9 years, whatever it was, almost 9 years with New Japan from 2011 to 2020. Now 6.5 plus years with AEW. So pretty much all of my career, and then what we did, obviously working with New Japan and NWA and all the stuff that we did then. uh, I can't help but be happy and proud of that aspect of it. But at the same time, I think I'm always in a situation of, people kind of underestimate me. I think they undervalue me to whatever degree, and that's fine. I think to a degree that keeps me motivated because, especially at this point in my career, it helps me go, all right, cool. I dare you to give me a chance. I dare you to put me in that ring. I dare you to hand me the microphone and see what happens. And then I'm always I think pleasantly surprising people when I go, oh man, you can still do this. Oh man, you can still say the right things and whatnot. And um, so I think it's one of those things where I've never been the guy that's just been pushed to the moon and on top of the business, on top of the companies that I've been a part of. But I think I've always been the guy that when they stick me out there, I think they halfway stick me out there thinking, it'd be all right. And then I go out there and do something really good, and they go, "Oh man, that was really good." Whether it was with New Japan and after I worked with Will, or the countless times that I've done stuff in AEW where they went, "Man, where did that come from? That was really freaking good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can. I've always been able to. It's just my opportunities have been few and far between." So, hey, for me, it's fine. Being an underdog is okay because, like I said, I enjoy catching people off guard in the best ways when they start going, "Oh, okay, that we didn't expect that, but that's awesome that we got that." So it is what it is. That's life. That's wrestling. That's everything that you can say in every cliche in that moment. But yeah, I'm happy and proud of the fact that I've had 26 years and the ripe young age that I'm at. And people like to use that as a reasoning for, oh, he's this age and he's been in the business this long, and that's the reason he's only gone this far. And it's like, cool, keep underestimating me. You'll see what
hmm
happens.
yeah. I think you're still plenty young enough for that trip to the top. I think that age today is a lot different than it was 20, 30
Yeah,
years ago because of the way we treat ourselves and
yeah.
the way we condition ourselves today. So I would thoroughly endorse you. I tell you what, if I were starting a company today, you're the kind of person I would want to push to the top because number one, I know you're going to do business the right way.
Hmm.
You're super believable. You got the
Hmm.
size. I know you can talk on the stick. And
Hmm.
yeah, anybody who's not doing that with you, I think, is selling themselves short. You know.
It is what it is, man. Just keep
Yeah.
plugging away, and when that opportunity comes, pleasantly surprise them and yourself again.
Yeah, yeah. The story I like to share with people. I don't know if you remember this, but to me, it's like burned in my memory.
Okay.
2015, we're in Pasadena, Texas, doing a autism benefit show,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we're not going to say who this person was because it's not about him. This is about me and you talking. But there was a very
Hmm.
big person that was supposed to headline the card,
Hmm.
and he didn't show.
Hmm.
And you and Tommy Dreamer came to me and the other guy that was promoting it with me and
Hmm.
said, "Trust us,
Right.
trust us. We'll fix this."
Right.
And y'all went out and you worked the microphone, you beat the living hell out of each other. And like these fans who had spent their money to see, let's face it, all the other matches were good too, but
Hmm.
this guy was a headliner for a reason.
Yep.
And he no shows, and not one person asked for their money back. And while everybody else around me was in panic mode,
Hmm.
you came with a solution.
Right.
And that matters. That that means something. And thank you for that. I don't know if I ever thanked you because at the end of
You
those
did.
shows, you're losing your mind. How much money did we collect? There,
Yeah.
whatever. But
No, you were amazingly grateful. I think that night specifically, especially once it was done, because I understand. I've ran a couple shows myself, and I understand like how hectic it can be. It was definitely nothing I ever did was close to what you guys were trying to do, especially that night. Tommy is Tommy Dreamer,
yeah,
a legend in the business of professional wrestling. I'd done what I'd done in Texas and the companies I'd worked with on a bigger scale and whatnot. And we'd work together. We knew we could do what we could do, and we knew we'd deliver for you. And thank you for trusting us to do so, because you could have easily said no, this isn't going to work, and tried to do something else. But you trusted it, you trusted us, and you were extremely grateful. I remember that, very grateful that night. And that's another one of those situations where I think I pleasantly caught you and other people off guard. It was one of those, like you said, you were in panic mode. You were expecting something else, and we were like, "Listen, trust us, we'll do this." And maybe you were just saying it because you had no other option, but you did trust us. And then, like I said, after it was over, I think I'd like to believe that I made you a believer, and you were extremely grateful, and I appreciate that.
thank you, man. It wasn't, yeah, it was kind of because I didn't have many other options. But I'll tell you what, you didn't surprise me because that's why I like I said, I don't want to
Mhm.
reiterate myself. I like working with you because I expected a lot out of you.
Mhm.
I knew you could do the work in the ring. It's the
Mhm.
stuff beyond that, you know.
Mhm.
And more stories for another time. But thank
Yep.
you for what you did for my little promotion in Houston. Thank you for what you did for the NWA.
Yep.
Everybody, please go out and see Disclosure Day.
Yep. The close
All
bit.
right, my memory did work.
Don't be late or you'll miss it.
Starring Lance Archer.
I don't know about starring, but I show up. That's for sure.
Hey, who knows what comes next for you, man? Like getting seen in one movie like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always, as always, I'm always hoping the best for you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. It's been too long since we've talked. Thanks for the time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you very
I'm going to
much.
take us out. Like I know you're a rock and roll fan, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm going to play some music from a friend of mine's band.
Okay.
And this is kind of, it's old. This
Okay.
band broke up 20 something years ago, but it's kind of got the spiritual thing to it. It's called Already Been to the Water. It's about being baptized. And that's
Okay.
what we'll say goodnight on. We'll start the music. And Lance, have a great week. And we hope to catch up with you again soon.
Absolutely, man. Thank you much.
Thank you.